And this is the Metropolitan Council meeting, Committee of the Whole. So those who are watching carefully notice that we are in the chambers, which we have discovered works better for all meetings, even Committee of the Whole. So rather than cramp ourselves in, and even though that's wonderful, we have had a number of meetings with where a lot of people want to witness the meeting.
Yeah, we were on laps last time.
There isn't a lot of room. And when people are standing room only, you know something's going on. So welcome, everybody. I'm Chair Zully. This is, as I said, the Committee of the Whole, September 3rd. And we are starting another round of land acknowledgements. I say another round because last meeting I read the land, water, and people acknowledgement, and now we're starting at and we're going to really keep track and give notice in advance, rather than me coming up and tapping poor Judy Johnson 5 minutes ago saying, will you read the land acknowledgement? But Councilmember Johnson, it is your honor.
Always ready to serve, Mr. Chair. Thank you. It is an honor, in fact, that the Metropolitan Council acknowledges that the land we currently call Minnesota, and specifically the 7-county region, is the ancestral homeland of the Dakota Iote, who are present and active contributors to our thriving region. As part of the Metropolitan Council's commitment to address the unresolved legacy of genocide, dispossession, and settler colonialism, and the fact that government institutions, including the Met Council, benefited economically, politically, and institutionally after the forcible removal of the Dakota Iote, the Metropolitan Council is dedicated to instilling land, water, and people commitments in regional policy. These commitments support the Dakota Iote, the 11 federally recognized tribes in Minnesota, Ho-Chunk Nation, and the American Indian communities representing over 150 diverse tribal nations that call the 7-county region home.
Thank you. And now everyone has seen that we have an agenda with 2 information items. And unless there's a concern, I will deem the agenda approved. We do have the minutes from our meeting on August 20th. And are there any corrections, additions, questions? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion and a second to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes from August 20th are approved. And as I mentioned, we are having both community development presentations today about really the implementation of the 2050 Imagine Plan. And I think we're starting with the local comprehensive planning system statements, technical assistance, financial assistance programs. That's a handful. I see Angela here, but I know you're joined by Amber and Emma and maybe more, so I'll be quiet and turn it over to you.
That's right. Chair and committee members, good to see you again. I'm Angela Torres, the Senior Manager of Local Planning Assistance. You'll see that we have a team of people up here with us. And they are even just a small representation of the large group of employees and staff and stakeholders that have helped to develop a lot of the tools that we're sharing with you today. Just wanted to really share out how much staff have been working on this. It's been well over a year. What you'll see today is you may have seen pieces of it in various committees that you're on. Maybe the CDC has seen portions of this. The LUAC committee has also been a part of this. Climate Working Group and Housing Working Group, because there are tools and resources across the board with all of our technical areas, and we're here to just show you the aggregate of all of those different things that the team have been working on. So just to be sure, we have taken feedback from a multitude of conversations, not only from the last 6 months, but the last 10 years. And all of that has kind of been built into the programs and projects that you will see here today. Not sure what that was. Here is the overview of what we are going to walk through today, but this is a little bit more fun. So I wanted to just talk through each of these things. The beginning of the process really starts with system statements, and Amber will be here to talk through that process and walk through those slides with you. The sector representatives are a key form of ongoing technical assistance that we have throughout the years, but I couldn't talk about technical assistance if we didn't mention the sector representatives. They really work directly with local governments and provide daily assistance to local government staff. One of the main technical resources for local government staff throughout the comprehensive planning process is the local planning handbook. That resource has been updated, and Emma will be here to talk through that with you today. The tools and resources are varied and far between in the local planning handbook. It's a very deep resource, and some of the tools and resources, one of the tools and resources is some of our new climate planning tools, and Peter will be here to give a live demo of that as well. We also do planning assistance grants, and we have a new small communities planning program that Merritt and I will talk about kind of at the end of the roadshow, and Amber will come back online, talk about the Planet program, which is a training and educational resource that we have for local government staff as well. So with that, I'm just going to go right ahead and turn it over to Amber to talk through the system statements. You'll see me pop back up when it's my turn again.
Great.
Thank you, Angela. Good afternoon, Chair and Council members. My name is Amber Turnquist. I'm a Senior Planner and Sector Representative in Local Planning Assistance in Community Development, presenting on decennial system statements. As an overview, I will be discussing the statutory direction for system statements, how we get to a final system statement, the procedure for disputes, and next steps. As you know, we are always somewhere in the regional planning cycle. When census results are released, the Council prepares the Regional Development Guide. Imagine 2050 was adopted in February, along with regional system plans and policies that set the long-range policy foundation for housing, regional parks and trails, transportation, and water. This means we move from policy and system planning to the fourth stage, issuing system statements. After which, the Council develops guides and training to assist communities as they prepare their local comprehensive plan updates. Then local plan implementation, subsequent plan amendments, and the cycle begins again. After adoption of the Regional Development Guide, the Metropolitan Land Planning Act requires that the Met Council provide each of the 188 local governments with a system statement. These statements contain information from the Regional Development Guide and are individualized reports that inform communities on key changes to the regional plan, forecasted growth, development expectations, and considerations affecting them. The statements are used by communities to review their comprehensive plan and prepare updates. Statutory direction outlines when system statements are issued, what is included in them, and the process to manage disputes. Statements also serve as a reminder to communities that comp plans need to be ready in 3 years. System statements will be distributed this month. System statements are issued when the Council updates or revises the Comprehensive Development Guide. We refer to these as the decennial system statements. We also issue system statements in the amendments when we get amendments to regional plans. We typically only do this once, and we refer to those as mid-cycle system statements. System statements start the local planning process and are specific to each community. They explain the impact of the 2050 policy and system plans to each government. We plan on distributing system statements again in mid-September this year to allow for the dispute resolution process to conclude by the end of this year. This dispute process is outlined in statute as 90 days total. Disputes usually revolve around forecasts for the most part and are largely resolved through the conversation and compromise. When that's not possible, there is a formal dispute process outlined in statute. The comprehensive plan updates are due in December 31st of 2028. This graphic is a succinct visual of a system statement. It provides information on community designations, forecasted growth, climate, and as applicable, affordable housing allocation numbers, highways, transit routes and facilities, aviation information, metropolitan sewer service, subsurface treatment systems, surface water, regional parks, and regional trails. If there are no concerns about the system statement, it is considered final 60 days after issuance. The reconciliation process, if an agreement cannot be reached, is that the community submits a resolution requesting a hearing within 60 days of receipt. That resolution must describe the disagreement and propose specific amendments. Concerns with statements are typically resolved through discussions between local government and their sector representative. The dispute procedure is as follows. Discussions with the sector rep. If you, as council members, get questions about statements as communities start to receive them, please encourage them to reach out to sector reps if there are any concerns. We are also available to work with you to navigate issues and prepare for conversations with your cities if needed. The next step is to request a hearing within those 60 days. LUAC or the Office of Administrative Hearing would hold a hearing within 60 days of that request. A report is then transmitted to the council, which makes a final determination based on that report within 30 days. A hearing may consider the reasonableness of the system plan, which is a change from the previous system statement cycle. As a high-level overview of the timeline, system statements will be distributed in September of 2025. By December of 2025, statements are considered final if a request for a hearing has not been received. If there is a hearing, reports are submitted to the council by January of 2026. By December 31st of 2028, local governments will have completed their comprehensive plans. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions at this point?
Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Amber, for this overview. And I'm just wondering, how many requests for hearings do we usually get in a cycle?
That is a great question. In 2025, there was one,
Okay.
and in 2015, there was also one.
Okay.
So most of
Is that
these
a
are
huge
resolved.
number?
Correct, resolved
Thank you.
earlier.
Yeah, Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just being the only council member who's been through this process here, I will say a lot of times you'll have communities reach out. I'm already getting communities trying to set up meetings ahead of this, some of this, as they talk about, as it being worked with the sector reps and all of that, is kind of meetings with the different communities is usually how things get resolved.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, having been on the other side of this and gone through this several
Right.
times. Appreciate all the hard work that goes into it. I just had one quick question. Office of Administrative Hearing, or LUAC, who comprises the Office of Administrative Hearing? I'm sure it lives somewhere in community development, but who is that?
Actually, that is a state
Correct.
Oh, is it
agency.
state? Okay. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. And then just one quick thing. So moving forward and everything's green lighted, they have until December 31st of 2028, and we know that that's not always a deadline that's met. So I know we had one, and God bless all of them for working on these, because they're very complex for all the communities, depending on their ability to, get it all done. But I just know we've got some that just kind of got across the 2020 finish line. So how do we manage to that? Is that this is just how it goes? They just ask for extensions? Is that how that goes?
Chair and committee members, sorry, Amber, if it's okay, I can
Go
help
for it.
out. Oh my goodness, I forgot what you said.
Just, for those communities that can't meet the deadline, what's the process? What's the
Right.
process?
So sorry. During the last round, the council formally extended the process for a year. That allows for grant communities to also have that extension. But there is no penalty if communities don't get their plans in on time. But the council has in the past taken action to formally extend those deadlines to alleviate some pressure that local governments feel.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, that's great.
Yeah, Councilmember Jenkins.
So are these system statements public or are they private until they're approved? What's the status?
They are public documents, and they will be on our website and emailed and mailed to the communities.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Ron.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember to Johnson's question too, I would just add, and there has been, I don't know what this was like 10 years ago, but I've received some feedback from communities who have been more compliant on the side of concern sometimes about the fact that deadlines have been challenging, and the last 5 years carried all sorts of challenge. So there's a part where it's less about looking back, but some about looking forward. And I do think as a council, that's an ongoing piece we should talk about if and when that could become an issue. I would like to continue to seek opportunities with all of you. While we may not have a regulatory or statutory authority to force compliance, there are other ways in which we can hopefully get communities to move along toward getting there, because once those are all in place, it's easier to have a framework to move forward through the coming decade together. And so that's a spot where I would just say I would like to continue that conversation with all of you and garner your thoughts and your connections into communities to hopefully prevent some of those like long delays going forward.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if just a response.
Sure.
Thanks, Ryan. That's huge because for, and it's not just my communities, but especially some of the smaller ones, and it'll be coming up in the presentation where there'll be some additional support for those communities because they're so small. And if they, maybe they're sharing a planner or they have to contract it out, which is very costly, and or they are turning over staff because they're smaller communities and staff are jumping around. They really want to get it done, but they've just got these roadblocks in front of them. So I know that there are some supports that'll be coming to help that, but I do appreciate that conversation because most cities aren't cast in the same format. They have their own unique challenges. So that would be great to figure out what's going on and how we can potentially help them get over that.
Great. Thanks for those comments. And back to you, Amber.
Handing it over to Emma.
Well played.
All right.
And I think that's an excellent segue into the local planning handbook. And so, good afternoon, council members. My name is Emma Dvorak. I am a senior planner in local planning assistance and the project manager for the local planning handbook 2050 update. So while this project is led by local planning assistance, the handbook is a collaborative project between information services, communications, research, environmental services, and transportation, just to name a few. They've all contributed to this project. So the Local Planning Handbook is the Met Council's one-stop online resource for local communities to access tools, data, and resources that support the development of their comprehensive plans. First launched in 2015, the handbook won a National American Planners Association Achievement Award in 2018 for best practices in planning assistance. The Local Planning Handbook has undergone a complete update and on Thursday, August 28th, was relaunched to support communities as they plan for 2050. The handbook update project kicked off in fall of 2024. The local planning handbook team began by evaluating how local planners used the original site and how the handbook could be improved given new technologies and new resources. Staff utilized the findings from the 2040 debrief and several rounds of user experience testing on the original and updated site to understand the needs of the local planning community. With the help of CD Research, the local planning handbook team was able to observe and record local planners as they completed activities on the existing site. These users were also interviewed about their work practices, web experience preferences, and their most valued resources from the Met Council to help further inform website improvements and identify any gaps. Across the board, users identified the checklist of minimum requirements as their most valuable resource. The minimum requirements checklist is a unique list of requirements that is specific to each community, which tells them what is needed to align their comprehensive plans with regional systems and policy. The language of minimum requirements is often technical and very specific, and it is important that communities have a clear understanding of what is being asked of them. To evaluate the clarity and accessibility of minimum requirements, local planning assistants convened 2 focus groups to review a draft of the requirements, one for developed and one for developing communities. These focus groups were comprised of both new and experienced planning professionals, including consultants who serve many smaller communities. The Council provides numerous tools, resources, templates, and guides that help communities meet their minimum requirements, which have all been available on the Local Planning Handbook website. But again and again, local planners identified that they often do not understand how tools and resources in the handbook related to the checklist, or were simply unable to locate resources specific to their needs. Additionally, local planners identified more ways that the council could support their planning efforts through the creation of new innovative data visualization resources and comprehensive guides. Before I launch into a local planning handbook web demo, I would like to highlight a few of the new data resources that are going to be available on the site. Some of these are currently live and you'll be able to explore them yourself. Others are still in a beta format or will be on the site later this year. Through the local planning handbook, local planners will receive a comprehensive step-by-step guide for water supply planning. This resource, which was developed by environmental services staff, not only guides communities through meeting the minimum requirements, but highlights best practices and examples of local ordinances that help communities get the most out of their water supply planning chapter. For transportation planning, staff has updated all resources and tools to align with the 2050 Transportation Policy Plan. And transportation staff is working with our Planet team. Planet is a program focused on ongoing education and training to create resources for integrated connections between transportation systems, equity, environmental justice, and natural systems. A couple more before I go back to that demo. For the next round of comp plan updates, we will have requirements for stewarding natural systems, consistent with the goals of Imagine 2050. To help communities meet these requirements, the Met Council staff have created an interactive mapping tool that gives cities the spatial data that they need to meet the Imagine 2050 natural systems requirements, while also offering a deeper look into local natural systems. Met Council staff has also created a story map that provides context, case studies, and examples of natural system strategies cities might choose to pursue. To support 2050 planning, the housing team is creating a data visualization tool that lets communities explore regional housing data, featuring historical trends, downloadable charts, and practical guidance on using the data to assess housing needs. The housing team is also developing a toolkit to help communities connect that housing data to potential tools and resources, policies, programs, and fiscal strategies, including Met Council funding sources. It will highlight implementation considerations, local examples, and best practices, while also identifying potential challenges to prepare communities for the road they may face. All right, now we are ready to begin our tour of the local planning handbook. Ben showed me how to do this. Oh, it went. All right. Welcome to the local planning handbook. So this is the homepage. Our user interviews and data tell us that local planners are primarily visiting the site for 3 reasons: to access community-specific information, to understand what is required for the comprehensive plan update or amendment, and how to submit their plan, and review submittal requirements for their applications. The redesigned homepage highlights these 3 frequent destinations to offer users a more streamlined and intuitive user experience. The local planning handbook is a living resource which will continue to be updated over the next several years, with most of those updates coming in the next couple months. To highlight what communities can expect and when they can expect it, we have added a temporary coming soon section to the homepage. I've preloaded most of the pages we're going to visit today so that we don't have to worry about loading time. Each of the 188 communities in the region has an individualized landing page, which we refer to as a community page. From here, local governments can access data and maps that are specific to their community's needs, including forecasts and affordable housing need numbers. Communities also use this space to track and submit applications. Local planners have told us that they often found information that was most important to them on community pages. However, with the old layout, they struggled to locate important documents such as the checklist or system statements and were unable to easily download and capture information from the tables. The new local planning handbook features an updated user interface that is based on that feedback. The most important resources, such as the checklist and system statements, are right at the top of the page, along with the regional development guide. As you can see, system statements and checklists and minimum requirements are yet to come. In the next tab, we see pre-generated maps that are individualized for each community that respond to several mapping requirements that communities can download in one of two file formats and add directly into their comprehensive plans, reducing the need to spend time or money on creating maps locally. The Resources tab connects communities with data tools to download and visualize current conditions in their community. And the Contact tab lets them know who they can get in touch with if they have any more questions. That's me. Each table, forecast, affordable housing need, sewer forecasts, as well as a table of existing generalized land use categories. All of these tables are now equipped with a download button that permits communities to download the data in each table with one click, so they don't need to worry about cutting and pasting, which can result in wonky formatting, or retyping the numbers, which has introduced human error. Finally, with the help of our ISGIS team, we created a regional map, which allows communities to explore regional data layers in context. We have allowed communities to explore a regional interactive map before on the current local planning handbook. However, those layers were cut into community-sized pieces, so they couldn't see exactly how they connected with communities in their vicinity. So now this is a regional map. Another important area of the local planning handbook is the required plan elements pages. Each required plan element or chapter has a dedicated landing page that we refer to as a plan element page. The information in these pages is specific to the topic area. One of the biggest innovations and responses to feedback that we received is the inclusion of the Microsoft Power BI table, which you can see here. This table is showing the minimum requirements, and communities have the ability to take these requirements and filter them to understand exactly what is required for their specific community. If I change the community, you change the requirements. You can also explore this by topic policy area. And what we have found that communities are most excited about is that the resources associated with each of these requirements are now provided in the same line, clickable in context for those communities. So previously we received a lot of feedback from communities saying, I don't know where to go for help, I don't know how to address this requirement, I know that you say you have a support or resource out there, but where do I get it? Now it is right here in the same line, easy for them to find and filterable. So 4 plan element areas that provide data tools or case studies that are built into web apps that live outside of the local planning handbook. We highlight those connections on the plan element pages through these buttons so that communities don't miss out on those valuable resources. Our focus is to provide communities with as much assistance as possible as it relates to the minimum requirements so that they can focus their time and resources on creating a plan that achieves local goals and priorities. Some communities look to the Metropolitan Council to provide them with inspiration or opportunities about how they can get more value out of their comprehensive plan. In the Going Beyond the Minimum Requirements section of the site, we offer a variety of ideas and resources that communities can choose to incorporate into their plans to accomplish more of their priorities. Finally, I want to show you our resource library. All of the tools and resources that are linked on plan element pages are also available here. We wanted to make sure that communities had multiple opportunities to find the resources and assistance that they are looking for. And as always, if they can't find what they're looking for, they can always contact their sector representative. We will now have a demo of one of the tools on the site. I believe that is, oh, did you have it up? Yeah. Okay, right there.
Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Chair and council members. So I was here last week talking about climate, talk about climate again, but we're going to be zooming into our local communities here as opposed to that regional aspect. So as you can see, this is linking from the local planning handbook. So this will be part of the minimum requirements for communities in the 2050 planning cycle. And I'm going to take us to our new greenhouse gas emission reduction tool. which loads slowly, but loads. So as you can see, this tool is still under construction. We're trying to make that really clear right now, but we do have a number of elements working for the communities now that they can begin to explore and start to give us feedback on how things work and where they might need more or less. So we start with giving some context of the issues of climate change and the role we have to play, as well as the minimum requirements for climate planning. Am I close enough to the microphones here?
Yeah.
And we start with that regional emissions data context. So what are we doing as a 7-county region? We try to give some summary statistics, graphs. You can click through different elements to look at trends, data, or various graphs, and this is downloadable as well for anyone interested. Up at the top, you can pick your municipality. We currently have this working for cities and townships, and counties are coming. I'm gonna go with my hometown of Rosemount here. And that will take you to a new tab where you can look at your municipality's emissions profile. So this looks very similar at first glance, but you'll see that the relative impact of these things, or size of these things, has shifted along with the numbers on the side there. For the most part, this is very similar. This will fulfill their first minimum or second minimum requirement that they include in greenhouse gas emission inventory. So no further work required for them. They can download the graph and plug it into their plan. The only other thing I'll highlight is we also have kind of put industrial emissions off to the side here. So Rosemount's a good case where the oil refinery that's inbounds kind of makes everything else a little invisible in these graphs. So it is not part of their requirements for planning, but we're still trying to give them as much data as they might be interested in for any given municipality. I'm going to try to move through these fast, so we could spend a lot longer on any one of these, but we'll start with land use. So land use is one of the elements they're required to address according to Minnesota statute, so understanding the impacts of climate with compact land use development. We're loading in their 2040 land use plans. This is just residential right now. I imagine we'll expand this to include other sectors as well. But just to kind of go to an extreme example, this allows you to update your plan if the numbers work. There we go. So we'll make Rosemount a lot more dense in this example. It gives you an understanding of what changed below there. And then as I move on to residential buildings, that's actually also going to kind of percolate throughout the tool and affect these other sectors. So in this case, it moves the housing profile toward more multifamily units, which is going to affect the emissions of buildings down the line. But once again, we kind of are trying to give a lot of context to a little, well, not a lot, but a little bit enough to kind of understand where these numbers are coming from. And I imagine we'll also have a more technical page available for anyone who really wants to do a deep dive when we get to full release. So you can move down and look at your residential building emissions through time. This is now projecting out to 2050. We see a very small little blip from our land use changes, along with a number that they can reference. And then we can get into the actual reduction strategies of the tool. So we have building efficiency standards and electrification. I'll just pick a really dramatic example so we can see the effects of the graph. So that would be the effect of electrifying heating in residential homes. And at the end, we can run this for all the strategies and kind of see the composite. So cities are required to take one or multiple of these actions in each one of these sectors to reduce their emissions through time. We give a little more context as well, some of the key impacts, and then they can download the full package results by sectors for anyone who's interested. Some of these, many of these, are still under construction, so we have the profiles out to 2050, but we don't have reduction measures working on the user side of this quite yet. Transportation is a little more filled out, so once again, it's really similar. We're kind of trying to give that context of where these emissions are coming from, do a little education along with the actual requirements required of them. And once again, I'll just pick something bold with electrical vehicle adoption. So this is an example where you're not necessarily committing to a certain number of cars, but taking actions, and then our research and our understanding of what that means for how the market share could change. So you can run that strategy and see that there's a reduction in emissions in Rosemont there. I'm going to run all these because it matters right now for the summary panel. Agriculture is another section that is under construction, but we can look out to 2050. Natural systems is not a requirement for cities, but we do want to give them the opportunity, and we do have some good strategies for increasing the coverage of plants, which are what are drawing CO2 down from the atmosphere. So they're an important mitigation strategy. So that one will be optional, but we want to give communities the opportunity. The last one I will scroll through quickly is waste. So waste is one of the smaller emitting sectors, but a area where I think cities and townships have a lot more agency to act. So again, we have reduction of solid waste, and then we have diversion into different forms. So increasing things like increasing your organics or recycling amount. So again, just to have something, I'll run a quick waste reduction. We also allow cities to make different commitments of when they want to start or how long these programs might run to, like how aggressive they want to be with that. And that would change the profiles on the right. So let me just click this last run strategies button. The final thing is that it'll take them down to a summary. Again, this is a place where we want to add a lot more, so we have our under construction sign, but you'll be able to see kind of the full picture of the emissions profile that you've changed in your city. This is just showing those three where we actually have actions working right now. And then I imagine we'll give quite a bit of impact summaries. And again, the ability to kind of download a full report. So they've checked all their sectors. You can see the green check marks for where they've made strategy commitments. So that will also kind of help really guide them through to make sure that they've hit all four of those elements of the minimum requirements. So we really want to make this as painless for cities as possible, but also as informative for those that really want to dive in deep. So I'm going to take us out of the tool. The other aspect that we are, let me get back to PowerPoints.
Before we totally leave
yeah.
that tool,
Go back to the tool?
we have a couple of questions. You have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thanks. Peter, one question on the tool itself. So it was, I don't know, 2 months ago, we had the presentation from MnDOT about work happening, in partnership with us around implementing the 2023 greenhouse gas transportation law and the need for offsets on projects that otherwise would be expansionary. Is this it seems to me from just the quick glance today that like the transportation part of this tool would be a place one could lead a community when trying to imagine possibilities of the types of offsets or things they could do to mitigate impact, whether it be land use or something. Like, does that make sense in a crosswalk between two different things going on at this? I know this wasn't built for that purpose, but it feels like it would have relevance to that purpose.
Yeah, I don't know the exact nature of that conversation with MnDOT, but certainly we're really interested in growing this tool to kind of have crosstalk. Exactly. We want to have it working with multiple divisions within the Met Council and outside agencies as well. So we do have a number of, I don't know if this answers your question, but in addition, it's not just electric vehicles. We do have strategies we're working on for more active and flexible transportation and trying to really make that land use piece fit with emission reductions as well. And yeah, we can keep improving on this. This is, even if these sectors weren't under construction, we would not consider this a finished product. I think there's a lot of great things we could do.
We'll do some follow-up on the crosswalk pieces to make sure because there's work they're doing too, but I think this is one of the things they hope exists in the world that now is going to exist in the world, which will help our entire region move ahead on this like really important piece of new legislation we're trying to get our hands around. So
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the transportation piece is run by a colleague in MTS, one of the data scientists lives
Perfect.
there. So
Okay.
yeah.
Any other questions at this point? Deb, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just almost following up on my comment earlier, like we'll get the opportunity to go out to a lot of workshops and city council meetings. And I actually see this, where they'll bring in, as part of their community engagement, where you can bring in, you could have this setup where you could say, hey, we changed these things, this is what can happen. And I think people in that setting respond to especially a visual rather than just numbers on the page. I
And
think we can
real-time
do-
change.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, in all of this, and I can just tell all my colleagues that the local planning handbook was new the last cycle, and communities will say it was invaluable. So like that it really, really made things easier. It made it simple for them to find maps and some of those other things that cost them money to build. And so to see the improvements is just great, so thank you.
Well, this interactive maps, I mean, all these tools, that wasn't there 10 years ago, right?
Not to this
It seems
level.
extraordinary.
Not at all.
Okay.
And it was a big deal then, and to see this sort of level of that, having that kind of real-time interaction is just the next step, so it's really nice to see.
Great. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks. And I do want to, that does remind me to highlight that we do have the opportunity, we are looking for feedback from communities from within the council, outside of the council for this as well. So if you have time, feel free to play around with this.
So here's a
live.
basic question. Like you've downloaded so much information on every one of these communities. I mean, it sounds like a tremendous amount of work on your part, staff's. And we're hanging around here in Rosemont. Is any of this restricted just to Rosemont officials, or can any of us, public, kind of just go crazy? Let's go look at what Minneapolis is up to.
Anyone can
Okay.
navigate from the local planning handbook right on over.
Right.
But yeah, this link is live to anyone.
New retirement hobby.
Now I know what I'm going to do.
Almost a video game.
I was worried I'd have nothing. Councilmember Chambliss. then-
Thank you. Yeah, I was kind of digging around in here yesterday in the tool for the pieces that are done. And I think it's also helpful to be able to download the CSV data because it's one thing to kind of just see it.
Yeah.
But if you can download it into a spreadsheet and then build upon it or combine it with some other data using some, key information, I think that's going to also be very helpful.
Absolutely. And I think that'll be a key point as well, since a lot of these communities do have their own greenhouse gas inventories, but in some cases we've expanded to other sectors. So agriculture is not one that gets highlighted as much in the region, but is still part of the requirement. So we're really hoping that it can be mix and match where it needs to be. So if they want to download that data and take that piece out of it, that easy and done. So thanks, Councilmember.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And two questions similar, though. When you're doing comp planning, you do share your draft plan to the jurisdictions around you so that all of those systems, everybody can see how it's impacting neighboring communities. And I believe the county gets involved too. So I can see this tool being helpful perhaps in that way, but also back to transportation. So the county has, significant investments across the region. And of course, MnDOT does all these different jurisdictions. So this, though, would only be pertaining then to city roads, or could the county jump in here or MnDOT jump in here with their systems, or are their systems not overlaid in this data as far as transportation goes?
So their data certainly in here. So the vehicle, the amount of miles that vehicles are traveling around all of the roads, it's from MnDOT data sources. But the actions that we are targeting here are really things that cities and townships would have some agency over. So we're trying to give them actions or commitments that they can actually
Sure.
make.
The reason I'm asking is the county is a great partner, but oftentimes the city pays 75% of the investment. So it's just natural that you have to work with the county when you're trying to plan your own systems and then time it with when you might get that county investment and then what those impacts in a good way might be. So it'll be fun to see it rolled out. I'm really impressed by this, and I just can't wait to see what else comes of it.
Yeah, Councilmember Jenkins.
So my question is, fantastic tool, love it. I can see it as a work project for our communities. How does it relate to the communities profiles pages that we also have on our website, which has a lot of the same data?
Well, a lot of the data is sourced from the same areas, so that housing data is from our other colleagues in research who are developing that. So it should be a one-to-one match in any of those cases.
So those are both data sources are there, up to date, one's not newer than the other, and that stuff they could use with, for comp planning, you're gonna use this tool. But if someone is just doing some research on population or transportation, they may actually be able to get to it faster on community profiles, diving right into it, correct?
Yeah, and I think it's a little more organized in a more easily accessible way there on community profiles too, whereas here you'd have to hunt over here for housing data and over here for
Okay,
population or something, so.
cool. Thank you.
But
Okay.
Quick question.
Go ahead, Victor.
Councilmember Powers, did you say there will be workshops on this? Or did I hear correctly? Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I've already had a couple cities
Oh,
reach
sweet.
out and
That's
like
awesome.
want to sit and meet and talk about this. So like they'll have workshops.
Nice.
And sometimes they'll have community events and invite council members there. And it sort of depends. Each city has their, or I guess each community has their own way of how they're doing this. But I have, like I said, I've noticed I'm already getting requests, so it won't be long.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well done. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move to our other portion of the climate action work. I'll sit down first. So this is intended to really be a companion piece to the emissions reduction tool, but also expands into adaptation and some other elements as well. So our climate action toolkit is also still under development. It will be linked from the local planning handbook next to the tool. But the toolkit is really intended to, whereas that previous tool is kind of the what, where are these emissions coming from, what can we do? The toolkit is geared more toward the how and why. So it kind of gives a description and impacts of these actions. It's going to be a little more granular than the actions that we've showed on the tool for the most part. But the idea is to give, the communities can go and play through the tool. They can make some selections, they put it in their plan, but how to do it is really the bigger piece here. So we're envisioning these as one-pagers. I think this is more Jillian's work than mine. I think this is going to be, we have about 40 planned right now. So these are, again, actions related across the economy to mitigation and adaptation. It'll feature case studies, so examples from within the region of how other cities or municipalities have done it. It'll also expand on kind of the co-benefits and the environmental justice aspects of these. So a lot of these climate actions, in addition to the mitigation or adaptation piece, tend to have some other co-benefit to communities, whether it's public health or environmental services. And then resources as well. And like I said, we really envision this as working pretty closely with that other tool. So when you're on the emission reduction tool and you're saying, what is this? I need more information, or how would I possibly do this? You can hopefully just link right over and get to a nice little one-page piece that links you to more resources. And
All right, so you've heard about the local planning handbook and many of the tools and resources contained therein. And before we move on to the next part of our presentation, I just wanted to ask if there were any other questions related to the local planning handbook or its tools. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good afternoon again. Amber Turnquest for the record. We have also a Planet program update. Planet is another opportunity to provide region-wide assistance with a focus on local planners. This program was initially implemented in 2016. We will relaunch the Planet program in 2026, which in the last round offered a variety of events, including a full-day planners conference, webinars, workshops, and tutorials. And the resources focus primarily on local planners as the audience. This program was also provided free continuing education credits with the American Planning Association, which was a big draw for planners. These events and resources were offered to help local governments understand minimum planning requirements, as well as share resources on planning issues with local staff that local staff were addressing in their communities. We had good participation in those events, averaged about 20 to 30 participants in most of the webinars and workshops, and about 230 people attended that Planet conference. Just some other highlights, there were over 19 workshops held with over 786 attendees. We are currently working with representatives from each of our internal policy groups and other staff to develop the content, branding, and coordination of delivery for those communities. The Planet project management team has started coordinating with Planet leads to finalize topics, training formats, and the 26 program schedule. An overview of the 2026 program will be posted on our Planet website later this fall. Please let me know if you have any questions.
So I mentioned earlier when we started this presentation, the sector representatives were one of the key resources. The sector representative program is one of the most important and visible programs that we have. Right now, we have 7 sector representatives on the map covering all 16 council districts. Sector reps are all experienced local planners who are knowledgeable and experienced with the council and its various programs and policies. We serve as key contacts, not within and for the council. That includes for you as well. And so some of the workshops that Councilmember Barber was mentioning, we are happy to help to facilitate and go with you as your technical resource person, along with Michael and Elias and Nathan and others as well. But we're here to help you as well as the local governments as you work with your local partners and as they in turn work with us. We do provide planning and technical assistance. We develop very close working relationships with local planners. We work on a day-to-day basis with local planning staff. We get called not only for comp plan amendments, but as well as environmental reviews, and of course during the comp plan update process, which is a very heavy lift for local planning staff. We are there to help provide any level of assistance as we can. A lot of the programs and strategies that you're hearing about will actually help make sector representatives more available. So as we do some staging of deadlines and other things for early submission and other kinds of incentives, we really hope then that sector representative time is more available later down the line if earlier comp plan submissions are made and other things too. We have all different kinds of things in plan. So the planners on the local planning assistance team I mentioned are experienced local planning staff, but they also helped with the development of the regional land use policy, as well as the cross-divisional work to develop the regional goals for climate and natural systems and equity. So they're very much embedded into the policy that the council has adopted and are very much looking forward to implementation of that. So one of the things that we heard in the last round was various concerns. We did a 2040 comp plan debrief, so like an after the effect, lessons learned, what went well, what didn't, with all of our local government partners. One of the things that we heard about is a level of consistency that needed some improvement. And so what we're trying to do is, well, what we have done is developed a training program for technical reviewers. We implemented that, a lot of the efforts for that already, really kind of customizing, standardizing a lot of our processes, making it clear, and we have plans to develop that even more so, specifically for the 2050 planning process. So we've done that for amendments, for new technical reviewers. We have an onboarding process. We have plans to really adapt that then and build that out specifically for the 2050 planning process. So our goals for the 2050 process are really to have a shared understanding of the standards and criteria for reviews, better communication, and improved efficiency and transparency. Those are leading this work in an effort to really address the concerns from local governments that we heard throughout the last planning cycle. So not only working to try and address previous concerns, but to exceed any expectations local governments might have for us. So the next part of our, sorry.
Excuse me, yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And do we also get feedback from the consultants that cities use if they don't have their own staff?
Chair and committee members, yes, absolutely, we do. We actually consider them local planners if they are serving on behalf of their clients. And so when we worked to develop some of the small communities planning program, for example, we worked a lot with consultants because consultants primarily did the planning for those smallest communities. So yes, we engaged them all throughout the process as well. We do know that through the Plan It program, we do need to find ways to entice them to come into that program a little bit more. As consultants, obviously, they're paid on an hourly rate or a different kind of format, but they are paid by their client community. And that doesn't always necessarily include a lot of extras. However, if we can provide a certification, like you have attended the Met Council Basics program or something like that, we've explored ideas on how we can really entice planning consultants more into that program as well, to better understand minimum requirements, which was a challenge in the last round.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks. I have a sort of a corollary question to Councilmember Johnson's. And Angela, I'm just wondering, within the sector representative program, which is so helpful, obviously, that we only get, one challenge or something filed each cycle. Obviously, the sector reps feel like they have the agency to resolve things before it gets that far. But as they allocate resources, I'm just looking at, say, the difference in maybe size and scope within some of the sector representative districts. Amber's, for example. She has 3 of the state's 4 largest cities, and then some of the other largest suburbs in the metro. And then if you go west, they kind of get a little smaller. And I'm just wondering, why that? Is it because these other cities have the resources, that they have the staff, and they don't depend on the sector representative program as much?
Chair and committee members, that's not necessarily the case. They depend on us in a variety of different ways in different spaces. However, we all kind of cross-pollinate with one another. Okay. So, for example, we just had someone that was on paternity leave for 3 months, sure, and we obviously fill in and backfill, and we are all experienced local planners. And so when Emma is working on launching the local planning handbook, her workload might be a little bit higher than some of our other staff members, and so we pitch out and we help in as needed. And that happens too when we are assigning comprehensive plan updates as they come in. If one sector rep doesn't have any, well, we'll all have them on our plates, let's be real. But like if one person has 3 and another person has 10, we try and balance that. So that's not the case. We do help one another out.
Thanks. I appreciate that detail. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representing one big, large area with that has its own sector rep for the most part. Well, does have its own. My original sector rep was Angela, so she is fantastic. Taught me all the things, so it was very helpful. But it's really important, I think, for the sector reps to build those relationships with the small cities. You take a district like mine, it's all told, it's 38 communities, and I can't be everywhere all at one time. We've got, our community relations people who can be out, but the sector reps build the relationship with the staff. And so then we really get that chance to be able to understand what each of those individual communities need, especially, when you talk about what the needs are in a Chaska or Shakopee versus our rural centers. I mean, this is just a different dynamic. And so it's really important to have sort of another set of feet on the ground, and also encourage you all as you're going out, make sure your sector rep knows where you're going. They'll also keep you in the loop. So because there's, all of these are touch points with the communities throughout this cycle, which is really, really important for it to go well. So.
Thank you, council members. So I know that we have another agenda item behind us, and so we want to be expeditious with our time, but we want to talk very specifically about 2 more really important programs, Planning Assistance Grants and the Small Communities Planning Program. That Small Communities Program is new. Merritt will talk about those in just a second. I'll pass this to her so she can get ready. The Metropolitan Land Planning Act identifies local planning assistance specifically. State statute enables the council to provide planning services and assist with local comprehensive planning. It also identifies the purpose being primarily for local comp plans, fiscal devices like capital improvement programs, and official controls like zoning and subdivision ordinances. Statute also enables the council to provide grants, loans, and other types of assistance to support communities in updating their local comp plans. but the provision of assistance is based on demonstrated need and available financial resources. It's up to the Met Council to determine how we assess demonstrated need. That is established through adopted criteria each planning cycle. The CDC members are aware that the Land Use Advisory Committee has been working on those criteria throughout the year, giving periodic updates to CDC, and we'll be bringing that forward as a big picture overview right now, but you will see that in front of you again later this year. So now I'll turn it over to Merritt, and you'll see me back at the end as well.
Thank you. I'm Merritt Clapp-Smith. I'm a planner on our local planning assistance team. Happy to be here today. So as you've heard, we really try to learn from the last planning cycle, what we can do differently the next time around, and that informs all the work we do, system statements, local planning handbook, and how we deliver our planning assistance. So we engaged communities, consultants, planners, people within the council to find out what did we learn from the 2040 cycle. The first thing we learned is grant assistance was very appreciated. So we've delivered grants for the past 2 planning cycles, maybe further back, and it is tremendously helpful. There is a wide range of effort the communities put into their comp plan updates, even differences between similar types of communities. So we're not able to exactly predict sort of the level of effort or expense that communities might undertake. But the grants help to cover a portion of the costs that communities dedicate to updating their comprehensive plans. And with each cycle, we need to reconsider if the criteria we are using to determine assistance are hitting the communities with the greatest need. That goes back to that statutory language of serving communities with demonstrated need and their capacity through financial resources. So to help consider this, we spoke with planners who work with many different types of communities in the 2040 planning cycle, and we asked for their perspective. Which communities, relative to others, have the most need? And their answers were very consistent. They identified population and financial capacity as the greatest determinants of needs for assistance. Population is key because the larger a community is, the more planning and engineering staff it has. And that staff is able to do a lot of the comprehensive planning work. For our very small communities, they sometimes are lucky if they even have a half-time clerk. So the lift for them is much greater. Financial capacity is the amount of money that may be available to that community to hire staff or consultants. There are some very small communities, however, we know that are quite wealthy. They have quite a strong tax capacity. So although they lack staff, they are seen as having the financial ability to hire consultant services, should they choose to do so. So based on kind of the continued observations, what we've found is that the very small communities struggle with updating their plans. And the Met Council has been talking for a couple of years about initiating a new direct planning assistance program focused on these very small and resource-constrained communities. So a new small communities planning program is proposed to launch for the 2050 planning cycle. The intent is to provide direct professional and engineering services to the region's smallest communities to help them update their comprehensive plans with the goal of reducing that burden of the plan update with those that have the least capacity to manage them. And we will do this through bringing on some new staff for a 2-year time period to our local planning assistance team. And we will work directly with those communities to do the bulk of the technical work of updating their plan. They will still be in the driver's seat around setting vision and priorities for their communities. The program concept has been discussed with the Land Use Advisory Committee in its past 4 meetings, and they strongly support initiating the program. So as I mentioned, in each planning cycle, we consider which criteria should we use to determine who we are serving. In recent planning cycles, Council has offered invaluable support through the direct planning assistance grants to a subset of communities. based on eligibility criteria to identify which communities have that great need. And in each cycle, we learn more about who needs the assistance. As I mentioned, in reflecting on 2040 experiences, we heard consistently that population and financial capacity are the biggest determinants of need. So after identifying potential criteria for eligibility, we tested different thresholds and combinations of criteria that would better serve smaller and financially constrained communities for the upcoming planning cycle. We then evaluated who would be served by the revised criteria and compared that to who we served in the 2040 cycle. And in consultation with the Land Use Advisory Committee, we set the criteria to provide roughly the same number of direct grants that we had in the previous cycle, which serves 63 communities, 2 counties, and there are 21 townships at that time, and 1 consortium planning group in rural Dakota County. So under the 2050 revised criteria, which I'll show to you in a moment, more small and medium-sized communities would be served instead of the largest cities in the region. And in addition, more inner ring suburban communities would be served. These are places where growth has slowed and the tax base is often declining, but their redevelopment planning needs are high and can be challenging. So after input from the Land Use Advisory Committee in May, we did some additional analysis they requested. First, they wanted us to look at kind of on the margins of the criteria, where there are a group of people that would fall in and out of eligibility, and should we tweak kind of where we were setting the thresholds for the criteria based on that analysis. We did not find that we were getting a lot of people on the margins, so we felt comfortable with the criteria. We updated in our original analysis, we were using 2023 population. We updated that recently with the adopted 2024 population numbers. And then the next big piece of criteria is net tax capacity per capita. So this is the financial ability of a community to access resources on a per capita basis to support their planning efforts. So as a result of the eligibility work, we've identified a tentative potential list of communities that might be served with this support. So what you see on this map, in yellow, you see communities that would potentially be eligible for a grant. These are cities and townships between a population of 2,500 and under 15,000. In green, you see the next size up of mid-sized cities between 15,000 and 30,000 that would potentially be eligible for grants. And then in blue, you see Carver and Scott counties. These are the 2 counties in the region that still maintain land use planning authority for their townships. So we provide them with grants to the counties to help do the comprehensive plans with their townships. In cross-hatching, in the bottom right corner, you see the Dakota County communities that have in the past 2 planning cycles pooled their resources to hire a single consultant to do a consortium plan update. And then finally, in pink or purple, you see there who might potentially be eligible for technical planning assistance under the new Small Communities Planning Program. This map will change slightly before a final version comes forward for consideration based on updates to data or if any final tweaks are made in proposed criteria from the Land Use Advisory Committee. So here you can see the criteria that is currently being proposed for eligibility for the Small Communities Planning Program. So it would apply, overall the program would only be eligible for communities that have a population under 2,500. And then depending on if they're under 500, 500 to 1,000, or 1,000 to 2,500, we have kind of a stepped level of net tax capacity per capita. So for instance, if you only have 300 people, your net tax capacity per capita might be a little bit higher, and you still can't pull together that much money because it's such a small community. So we've done kind of that tiered step up in the net tax capacity. And I want to clarify, all of our net tax capacity per capita criteria are measured against the metro median. So we take that midpoint of that net tax capacity per capita for the region. We call that 100%. So anybody that's above 100% is kind of in the top half. Anybody below is in the bottom half, and we have communities that go from 45% of the regional median to 800% of the regional median. So what you can see here is based on our most recent analysis, we would have a total of 32 communities potentially eligible. Here is the map that just shows the potentially eligible communities.
We
I
have
wanna-
just a couple of questions
Yeah,
here, I think. Councilmember Chambliss and Judy. Judy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do fiscal disparities factor into this at all, or is, when you're looking at net tax capacity and who are contributors or receivers?
It does not.
Okay.
It does not.
And was that thought about at all in the process and kind of set aside then, or not?
That is not something that was integrated into the criteria analysis in past planning cycles, and so we did not introduce it as a new measure this time.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, I just didn't hear Councilmember Johnson's first, the point that you were,
Yeah, my question was, did fiscal disparities, whether
Okay,
they're a
thank you.
contributor or a receiver into the pool of the metro area, have a factor in the net tax capacity?
Thanks, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I just want to note on the map, what you can see here is that a lot of the communities that would potentially be eligible are in rural areas. However, it's hard to see, but we do have a few core communities such as Hilltop, Lauderdale, Landfall, and Mendota. You also see that there is still kind of a cluster in that rural Dakota County communities that have participated in the collaborative approach in the past. Communities that are identified as eligible this time around for the new Small Communities Planning Program will have the option to participate in the program, or they can opt out. So nobody is required to participate in this new program. All right, this shows you the same metric, the same type of matrix for criteria, but this is for grants. So again, we are using current population and net tax capacity per capita. So the general criteria for communities, if they're between 2,500 and just under 15,000 current population, and their net tax capacity per capita is less than or equal to 125% of the metro median, they'd be eligible. Or if they're slightly larger, between 15,000 and 35,000, then they would be equal to or less than 100%, they would be eligible. I want to note that a change this time is that any community that is over 35,000 would not be eligible for a grant this time. And that goes back to the sense that these are communities that already have more resources generally and staff, and relative to other communities probably are more capable of taking on a comprehensive plan update. So the total of that, based on the last analysis, would be 68 communities eligible. We are continuing again with the 2 grants to Scott and Carver County, and also continuing again with offering the consortium grant opportunity. This wasn't explicit in the past cycles, but the Dakota County rural communities are the ones that have used the consortium approach. It is appropriate for that context, so this time we are clarifying that the consortium grant would be eligible to those Dakota County rural communities should they choose to take that approach again. So that would be one group. getting that grant together. So here's the map, just looking at the grant communities again. So you can see the coverage, a lot is still in the rural areas through those counties and townships. But if you were to look at the map from last time, you would see that we served almost nobody in the core of the region, because one of the criteria the last round was that you had to have a high growth rate. And we tend to see high growth rates only on the edges. This time, I think, based on all the conversations with people that had experience with communities, they said there are a lot of communities that have really hard work to do in the core, even if they aren't growing as fast because of redevelopment needs, aging infrastructure, changing housing. And so they felt that it was appropriate to just move to population and net tax capacity per capita for criteria.
Sorry, go ahead, Johnson.
And just one other thing, Mr. Chair, if I may. So, in recent years, and I'm just, the core and other parts of the region, though, have seen a drop in property values, especially commercial, industrial. And so I'm wondering, how is this data, does the data lag? Because certainly there's just been a big shift in property valuations, and then that plays into net tax capacity for a community. So how is that falling into the current proposal? Has it picked up that data in this proposal?
We are using the best available data that we have at the time of this analysis and for the decision that will come before the council in the fall to set the criteria. And that was true last time. You kind of have to pick your point at which you're getting your data set, and then the eligibility list is created at that point. I had communications last week with the Minnesota Department of Revenue. I talked to their lead researcher about all of their data, what were the expectations around updates, and what he said is the data we have been using, which is based on all property types and its potential for generating revenue, is that they get all that data from communities. It's based on assessed values, and they get that data submitted over a number of months. Minnesota Revenue staff then check the assessed values for many of the properties against recent sales. And so they are correcting for the fact that some communities tend to go high on their assessments and go low, and so they're trying to get kind of that updated, like what is really happening out there around these values. And they call that adjusted net tax capacity. That is the data set that we used last time for the 2040 analysis, and that is the data set we recommend using this time. Just in the past few months, they finally released the adjusted net tax capacity data for 2024, and that'll be the most current that's available.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that explanation, because I just know that with assessors, there's a lag, right? Because you look the year before, January 1 sales and so forth. So this is good, and then I was unaware that Minnesota Revenue did sort of an adjustment in there, but I'm assuming that all of that will be noted as to where the data is coming from and the dates of that, because I can just hear some communities going like, well, hey, we're in the middle of these changes, and, but it's always a point in time, and that's been consistent, so.
Yeah, I just want to add that Director of Research told me that adjusted net tax capacity data is what other state agencies are typically using when they are setting criteria for their own granting or assistance programs. So there's sort of a standard of use.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
With that, I think I'll turn it back to Angela. Thank you.
Thank you, Merritt. I was troubleshooting some of our other stuff. We have a plan for going forward, and so you'll still get to hear about the next agenda item as well, but we're going to work to wrap this up really quickly. So There are ongoing and upcoming conversations with the Land Use Advisory Committee. I want to let you know first about 2 incentive programs that we're proposing to really advance regional goals. Imagine 2050 identifies 5 regional goals which local governments implement through the policies, priorities, and actions in local comprehensive plans. The resources, tools, and planning requirements related to climate and natural systems help local governments contribute to advancing those regional goals. However, the more people-centered goals, specifically equity, but also healthy and safe communities and a dynamic and resilient region, require a more tailored approach, usually best led by those local governments, and are often where there are fewer resources available to support those efforts. So we can use the Planning Grants Program to incentivize some of those goals as well, along with early plan completion, which I mentioned earlier. One of the biggest challenges that we have is receiving 180 plus comp plans at a single time. And in December of 2018, we had 72 plans that were submitted in that month alone. That's a tremendous amount of work for all of the technical teams across the council. Those tasks also have to be prioritized because we have a 15 business day required statutory deadline to respond to submissions. And so finding ways to phase submission to help local governments meet those deadlines at the end of the year, all of this is really another opportunity to help incentivize early completion so we can do some of those other things. We do need to continue a conversation around funding priorities for the grant awards. We did receive positive feedback about continuing the award categories from the last round, which included sewered, unsewered, and then the county and consortium groups. They also have talked throughout the year about various priorities of like, let's serve at least no less than we served last time at the levels that we served last time, but let's try and increase that where possible, serving as many communities as we can. So really confirming some of those conversations. We also have some small community program considerations. Engineering costs by far are one of the most expensive areas for small communities to expand on in the comp planning process. So thinking about how we can best support those efforts. Within our budget, we do have a constraint we don't have $1 million for every community, so we obviously have to be judicious with our budget. So thinking about how we can best talk about local cost share, what we can provide, what we can't provide, being realistic but clear, helping as much as we possibly can for the Small Communities Program. So with that, I do just then want to leave these question prompts up for you. We shared a lot of information today, a lot of really exciting work that's been going on, but we do want to hear your feedback as well. Our hope is that the resources and programs that we've shared with you really help local governments do the best planning that they can, meet those statutory requirements, meet the statutory deadlines, and really are able to then focus on local planning issues while still supporting the regional goals which the council has established. We want to resolve those known issues, but while providing higher levels of assistance, improving upon last round in the same way that we improved upon previous rounds as well. So here I'd then just like to ask if you have any questions about the planning process. Importantly, how can we support you in your work with local governments, in your role? And then if there are any specific local planning issues that you know of in your communities that you might want to mention.
Great. Councilmember Lilligren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Angela, and congratulations to the team sitting here, all of the others that have worked on this. I mean, this is a monstrous amount of work. Very, very impressive. And before we move to your prompt questions, I just wanted to sort of punctuate the planning assistant grants and the small community planning program that you presented, and just say how appreciative I am and the whole CDC committee for the work that you've done on this. And we've been kind of harping on these kinds of things as we prepare for the 2050 comprehensive planning process, and the refinement and the planning assistance grants, that's very helpful. But the development of the small communities planning program, that has been such a priority on the community development committee, and to see it coming to fruition. Yes, there's a resource question, as you just outlined, but I feel like this is really a responsible response to what we hear from some of these smaller communities where it's a challenge, and then how we can regulate how these plans come in so it's a more manageable process. Hats off, congratulations to all y'all. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just really want to echo that. Like, I know how important the planning grants are for these communities as they're doing the comp planning. They want to do things. They want to do it right. They want to engage with their communities. It's such a benefit to them. But the addition of the small community program will be invaluable for some of these communities. They have to go hire consultants. They have to go do these other things. They don't have staff. You know, I see like New Germany and Hamburg are very small places. But they also do want to look to the future and being able to offload, especially the engineering costs and all of that, it'd be just a great benefit to them. And I think, it will really be helpful as we're out talking to, groups like Scale or Carver County leaders of, hey, we were listening and we know there was a problem. We tried to come up with a solution. So I'm really excited about it.
Great, yeah. Do you have something?
And ditto to what Deb said, I know there were several council members that have been getting presentations from the Community Development Division about providing more support, especially for the small cities. I know, Judy, you've brought this up several times, and so this is a time of celebration to know that we have the funding to support the comprehensive planning process.
Tony.
Thank you. I would echo all of the comments that you've heard, and kudos to you for the work that you have done in listing and laying out plans that really do engage support for all our communities, especially, of course, the small communities. And I compliment you in that you are leaning forward to both solve the issues that they have as well as the issues we have by incentivizing that early partnership and showing them the opportunity to not only prioritize them, but to gift them as well with additional support because of their willingness to go early. So kudos. And on all of the communication that you are sending out, I appreciate, that we will be invited. I'm assuming that we will be invited as you talk with our communities. And so we know when you're going to be there. And we also understand the written communication that you're sending out, offering tools, resources, and training so that we're able to motivate and encourage them to take advantage of that. And even for the larger communities who have their own planners and staff, it is really, really helpful for us to be able to reinforce how the Metropolitan Council is engaging supports for them. So thank you for being sure to communicate to council members as you are also communicating out in those areas that we serve. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was one of the people who was asking for the small city stuff, so I'm also very happy to see that. I do have a concern, however, about the concept of giving extra money to some of the cities for council goals when there are a number of rather large, fast-growing cities that have been cut out of the program this year that will be paying 100% themselves. And it can, like Lakeville last time spent $300,000 on their plan. So it's a substantial amount of money. So to say, oh, we're going to give bonuses to some communities and we're not going to partner at all with some of the communities that are bearing the biggest burden of growth right now sends kind of a bad message in my mind. I mean, the council as a whole can decide to do whatever they want. I'm just pointing out something that really stood out to me as maybe an unintended consequence.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Councilmember Carter?
Yeah, one of the things that I've heard is a lot of complaints from the smaller communities saying they didn't have the resources, they couldn't afford to pay staff to the extent that they needed to really submit really good plans. And so I'm happy to see this. And what I'd like to do is maybe get some one-on-one hands-on training so I can kind of what if my district so that before I meet with them, we can kind of hash it up. But I think this is a wonderful tool and kudos for putting this together.
Thank you. We'll have your sector rep reach out to you, Councilmember.
Okay.
All right, one more comment, because I know we have another presentation after this. Go ahead, Councilmember
Thank you,
Johnson.
Mr. Chair, and not for now, but one of the comments that was talked about along the way when I was on CDC and maybe before that, but is maybe for the smaller communities, doing some sort of a refresh since they're fully built out or whatever. I know state law really mandates what has to happen, but I don't know, maybe through the grants and support they can do that. I don't know, just something that I think's come up. Secondly, it'd be super great if the legislature would kick in some more money for this. That'd be great, always. And then last but not least, I just have to reflect on the fact that there are bills at the Capitol that'll come back around again this next session. There's bipartisan support, and that is, the undermining of local control when it comes to zoning and guiding. And that is to address housing, but that is what I hear, my communities that I hear from, and actually I was up in central Minnesota this weekend and I saw a mayor up there and they're afraid of that too. And yet we have to do this comp planning, which goes deep into zoning and guiding and deep into zoning and systems planning. So I guess I'm just, they are all in to do this. This is what they know they need to do, but they've got this threat that looms over them that, we'll put all of this together and then we might be wiped out from all of our local control when it comes to our hearings and our reviews and our input and our final decisions under current state law. So I really hope council will hear out their cities because it's just this important issue for sure, housing, we all know that. But I think that it's very short-sighted to just undermine local control when, at least for our communities, they're all working to do this deep planning so that everything works together and housing is centered to this, and the tool talks about that. So that worries me, and I don't know if the legislature really understands the great work you're all doing here, the importance of the work that we're doing here totally for the region through 2050 that is mandated by the legislature. So I think they're very much in conflict, and I hope that we can send that message out. I know it's maybe a little more difficult for staff. Of course, we have our team at the Capitol, but I think council members, when we partner with our cities, we really have to hear about their concerns because they are wringing their hands about this right now.
Well, on that point, there's a lot to be continued, and thank you. Really appreciate this incredible work. And I think, Councilmember Lilligren, you said, I don't know how you describe it, a boatload, a massive amount of work that went into making these tools. And we've been talking about the need to support smaller communities, those that were completely stretched to be able to afford to do this technical work. And now we've come up with a solution. I certainly heard about that from legislators on the point of what you described. So congratulations, really wonderful. And we look forward to as you embark on these next steps.
Yeah, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Now, I know, last but not least, we have to talk about an outcomes measurement program, but really appreciate your patience and thank you for joining us today.
Chair, council members, thanks for having us here today. Oh, clicker.
That clicker moves around.
We are an organization that adapts to change, and so we are probably going to adapt this presentation a bit, given the time that we have, okay? And move through some of this content quickly. But I just want to say up front that, we are more than willing to come back and have a fuller conversation on this topic, on this particular aspect of the measurement program. There is time to do that in October, so we can make up for what we don't have time to discuss today. For the record, I'm Kristen Ribaturas. I'm a research manager in community development, here with my colleague Sarah Nelson, who is an outcomes measurement researcher with our team. What we had prepared for you today is an overview where we recap the key points about this work, including a discussion that we had at Committee of the Whole in June. We then will describe some of the work that we are doing to prepare for an amendment to Imagine 2050 that is focused on the outcomes measurement program. And we had intended to walk through each of the 5 regional goals and share some examples of measures that we have proposed for your consideration. I think that's the portion of the presentation that we probably won't have time to move through. It would just be really rushed and quick. So I think we'll just go ahead and move into kind of what the next steps look like, and we can talk about when to have that additional conversation.
That sounds like a great plan. We don't want to
Yeah.
skim over.
I can only talk so fast. It can be faster than this, but I don't think it will be intelligible
Okay. No,
after
that's
a
just
certain
fine.
point.
And we'll
Yeah.
come back in October.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Well, you won't, but.
I'm going to be watching. She'll be here. I got, probably not here.
I should also mention that, given that we're having a slightly different conversation today, we are prepared to speak to some of the goals, or I'm sorry, the measures that we have proposed in the additional materials. We had examples in the slides, but then there's this spreadsheet that's 13 pages of measurement ideas here. We are still willing to take questions if anyone has any pressing questions about any particular measure. I do want to say there are 68 measures. Sarah and I are familiar with all of them. Do we know the technical details of each one of them down cold? Not yet. Not yet. We're getting there, but we may ask to kind of follow up with you if you do have those specific questions tonight. Or we can certainly, we'll do more of our own research and homework and come prepared for that conversation next time. So just taking a quick maybe step back from the content on this slide for the benefit of our newer council members. I just wanted to maybe, describe the context of why we're doing this work. What is this measurement program? As you just heard from Angela's team, the Imagine 2050 Regional Development Guide is an ambitious and bold plan. It includes 5 regional goals, over 100 numbered policies, and close to 700 actions are described in the contents of this plan. The foundation of the plan was the 4 regional values that this body established: equity, leadership, accountability, and stewardship. And regarding accountability specifically, I'd like to just read the definition that I believe was crafted among all of you. We value being effective in our work and achieving measurable outcomes. Our region is known for its research, initiatives, and collaborations. We must be open to criticism and clearly understand when we are not achieving results or have harmed communities. We recognize that we can maximize our effectiveness by being in partnership with others, and we will be transparent and flexible so that we can change course when needed. So, the outcomes measurement program and the idea of having, measures and research that track the important trends in the region over the next decade is really, born from that accountability value and continues work that we started in 2040, but that we're really pushing to take a different approach with this time in hopes of having deeper conversations, of really feeling like we understand the transformation of this region as it unfolds. One program, so I hope that provides a little context for those who are new around the dais, or even for those who may, it has been a while since we've been talking with you. So I hope that, we can recognize that one program can't fulfill that entire value. Those are, that's a very tall and important order. We see our roles more as facilitators, as coordinating activities and information, as stewarding, data and other resources, and not supplanting, anything that is existing in terms of current reporting or required reporting. We can't do an integrated enterprise performance measurement program right now, but this work has a role to play in bringing that value forward. And I think it is of interest of folks, within the organization, our partners, our stakeholders, and our critics to make sure that we are putting forward information and that we are being very clear about the data that we want to track, that we think is of value, and making sure that we're staying in touch with this conversation over the next decade and beyond. In June, we spoke with many of you here at a committee of the whole meeting. We shared the 2040 report, like the final report on the 2040 indicators, and talked through some of those challenges and lessons. And we also presented kind of an array of options for a new approach. they each had a different balance. They were not mutually exclusive options. They each had a different balance of high-level trends about the region or regional indicators, measures that describe the on-the-ground efforts of our partners, which we call regional measures, and the measurable outcomes of our own work, our own efforts, Met Council measures. So each had a slightly different mix or balance of what was included when we had our discussion. And even as a slightly smaller group as we were that day, there seemed to be there was a great conversation. We've summarized some of our takeaways from that discussion here. And overall, the support seemed to coalesce around option D, which was kind of a fuller approach to the program, a more holistic approach that included each one of those data types that I just described. But I think we all acknowledge that to do that is going to take time. It's going to have to be iterative, that it would be an enduring program that would certainly be useful through our 2050 plan, but also beyond, right? Really setting up an infrastructure to do this work into the future. And our real key takeaway from that discussion, which was, maybe the project approach with limited number of high-level indicators falls short here. Given the scope of the plan, all of the moving parts and pieces, maybe that is not going to get us quite where we need to be. And a programmatic approach that strategically aligns research, monitoring, and policy, as sort of described by that option D, was of interest and worth exploring. So we have moved forward in applying option D, and that's what we are bringing forward today as sort of a proof of concept of what does option D look like when applied to regional goals. And so that's where a lot of the measures that you see in the additional materials were born from, and Sarah will talk a little bit more about the origins there. I do want to just describe that we have charted out a plan for bringing the outcomes measurement amendment forward. So today was meant to be sort of the start of the series of presentations and engagement opportunities about this work. Following today's discussion, we will work with our colleagues to bring forward those policy measures at Community Development Committee and Environment Committee. You'll notice transportation is not on there because transportation has already adopted with their 2050 plan regional and federal performance measures. So they have nominated some of those measures to be part of this body of work, but we are not reopening the 2050 TPP to have this conversation. We're kind of bringing everyone else along to where they're at. The amendment, and then following that, we would on October 8th be ready to kind of have that conversation with this full body and bring forward all of the policy measures as well as the goal measures that we have, which again, we can probably find a time to discuss sometime between now and October 8th or even shortly thereafter, before we ask for action on this amendment and releasing the amendment as a draft for public comment and setting a public hearing date. What exactly would be in this amendment? There are two main parts. Part A is really it's the program narrative. It is going to describe how we're going to carry out this work, the processes around what guides our decisions about what measures to include or not include, how we're going to document changes, the reporting cadence that we have planned, and also sets internal commitments and expectations. The second part of the amendment is a technical appendix that will include those proposed measures, our starting point, essentially. We know, as I sit here today, I can look across at all of you and say that those exact measures will change, probably, over the course of the decade. That those measures, that list, even if it's long, will still be incomplete because new information will come forward, new data sources, innovative techniques in using those data sources, as we start our own implementation. For example, in the development of our equity frameworks, We will have more Met Council measures to report on, for example. So I just want to be clear that the technical appendix that really describes the specific measures at that level of detail, we will be including language that acknowledges that it is an evolution. And so we'd love to hear your thoughts about, kind of that approach to this work. Those would be the two components of our amendment. I think today what we were interested in hearing about is this more programmatic approach as it was applied to the regional goals. So as you maybe had an opportunity to, kind of look through some of the proposed measures, how does this strike you? Does this approach feel overwhelming? Does it feel flexible and potentially, iterative and kind of meeting the moment as far as, how to prepare ourselves to talk about a plan that is so robust, right? And then also certainly to identify if there's any topics that feel missing. When it comes to our policy measures, we have a scope there. They describe specific things. When it comes to regional goals, we had a nice range of topics addressed in those chapters. And so we just want to make sure we're not leaving anything out of that conversation. I think this was designed to highlight that the how of the program, the narrative and the description of the process is really the important element of this, as we acknowledge that the specific measures may change over time. Let's see, Sarah's not going to walk through the regional goals themselves and the proposed measures for them, but I think we have a few more things to say, if it's okay, about the development and the origins of that, and then we can kind of skip through towards the end and talk about some of the immediate next steps and discuss with whatever remaining time we have left.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. So we will start with how we got here. So our measure development really began in 2024 when the foundational work and the policy writing for Imagine 2050 was still underway. So we attended community engagement events, we read public comments, read other qualitative research, really trying to better understand how stakeholders and residents of the region think and talk about progress. We've also been reviewing work across peer agencies, connecting with others doing this type of work within the region, and learning a lot about related research at the state of Minnesota with partners and in academia. We've also been hard at work internally too. We have been working with across the council staff, a lot of collaboration. We've been reviewing, reports and work that already exists at the council, and analyses, presentations, other things that already exist that we can just elevate and really talk about our progress in the context of Imagine 2050. And a few ideas that we've squirreled away over the years. So just a refresher on the language that we're using here. We've separated our measurement ideas into different types. So the first type is regional indicator. These are the big population level trends that provide context about the region, where we are. They're also sort of the big needles that really require collective action to move. Jumping over to the far right here, we have Met Council measures. And these speak more directly to how we as an organization are advancing our 2050 goals and policies. These include things like grants, programs, processes. In the middle, we have regional measures, and these are really constructed around policy. They're really meant to demonstrate the local uptake of regional policy direction. So what are our local partners doing? What are other organizations doing on the ground? So for this discussion today, which is focused on the regional goals, most of the measurement ideas fall into either the regional indicator bucket or the Met Council bucket, or Met Council measure bucket. But more of the regional measure ideas will be represented in future policy-focused discussions and presentations. So just a few things to keep in mind as you review the measurement ideas, not today, but later at your leisure. We have recapped the key description and topics within each goal, and we follow that with a sample of the proposed measures that we're considering. The full list is in the comprehensive spreadsheet that is attached as agenda materials as a separate link. That includes all of the many pieces that we're considering for this work. Imagine 2050's goals are broad and interconnected, so about 1/2 of the 68 proposed measures are cross-listed with other regional goals. Those connections are detailed again in that linked material, but please keep that in mind as you're looking through the ideas that we've pulled forward. And also, just before we move on, we just want to highlight that we are envisioning this measurement program to be iterative and adaptable throughout the decade, like Kristen described. We know of some topics and areas that we hope to be able to add to the measurement program in the future. And we are also continuing to work with Met Council staff to review and tweak and add ideas to this measurement program. Also just want to acknowledge that we are in a time of changing data availability, particularly at the federal level. So while we have done our best to identify specific data sources and frequencies, things like that, they are changing all the time. So the ideas that we've included in the agenda materials, we are like 75-ish% sure that they're feasible as of now. We'll see what happens. But staff are continuing to refine the measurement ideas and monitor data sources as we move forward.
So we're going to kind of just click through these. The general format here was to just quickly recap the topic areas related to each regional goal, describe a little bit of the evolution from where we have been to what is described in Imagine 2050, just to provide that context, right, for the select measures that followed. So I'm just going to click through these slides, and you have the materials in front of you. I will say, just briefly, that when it comes to equitable and inclusive, we have 24 measures, I believe, that we've proposed for that. However, I want to say that every measure that we've been considering for this program, we have explored for disaggregation by demographic characteristics or by spatial disaggregation, to really be able to describe and understand who or what exactly, how this issue is playing out at a sub-regional level. Many of our policy areas have also included regional indicators that speak directly to equity because they align with some of the policies that were identified that also address equity. So I just wanted to call that out specifically. I think healthy and safe is another goal where we've seen quite a bit of evolution in terms of our thinking and our understanding of our role as Met Council and what role we play in making communities healthy and safe. And so there are a lot of additional measures there that are outside of our more traditional topic areas for research. And that's another area that's been a bit of a evolution in terms of keeping track of what is available and unavailable. That's public health data is just one of the places where that we're in that dynamic moment, if you will. But moving forward, through the rest of the goals, you can see what we have here. And so we did have some questions. I'm not sure if they're still the right questions for today, but I just want to quickly skip to our last slide, which really just talks about what's coming up immediately following today's meeting. So the next time we'll be talking about this work is at Community Development Committee on September 15th. That day, we will also publish a web page about the program, including an interactive tool that's a lot easier to look at than long spreadsheets like this, that will kind of show some of those those relationships across goals and things like that, and also provide some ways folks can comment, rank, say we like this measure, we don't like this measure, right? So creating that space for additional feedback and comment, and we would welcome comments from you that way as well, or there's lots of ways you can get your feedback to us, but we would certainly invite you to use those tools if they appeal to you. And so those have the next committee presentation dates. We mentioned the website. And yeah, by October 8th, we had planned to have sort of this full picture of proposed measures, whether it's goals or policy outcomes, and to make sure that you have kind of that complete picture before we move forward with an amendment, if that feels like the right next step to take. So I will leave these here. If they remain to be the right questions, perhaps you've had an opportunity to look at some of this material, or at least some of the recommendations or the proposed measures on the slides. But we are happy to take any questions or comments in the remaining time we have left.
Thank you for doing that crisp framework and going into how you approach what we're looking at over the next fall. And I know that you'll have an opportunity to come back and go deeper into those goals and the measurements. But in a more kind of general questions, which I invite today, one of the values of indicators is that, in my experience, has been what the trend we see over time. So I love that we're handcrafting new indicators, new measurements for the new world, but how do we tie that to what have we seen over the past 10 years since 24, the plan, I mean, not 24.
40.
40, you're right. The Thrive Plan, yeah.
There are certainly a number of measures that pick up the thread where we left it with 2040, looking at affordable housing production, looking at housing cost burden. There are topics that will perennially just be part of of our sphere of concern and influence, and in some cases direct measurement in terms of like work we do to change that. So there is a lot of continuity from what we had been looking at previously to now. I think there's just a lot more of it that we're proposing. We really want to think about this as a reservoir of data points and insights that we can dip into and pull from to unpack an issue and really consider that, rather than say, oh, we see a trend and that trend is changing, but we don't have the information pulled together that tells us why or gives us some indication of why. And so we're kind of trying to flip that a little bit and say, let's build up our understanding by looking at more diversity of data points, versus trying to distill it to something that still will require additional analysis information to really unpack. But I think we do see a lot of key points of continuity from the last set of indicators to now.
Great answer, thank you. Councilmember Lillard.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for the work on this. And I look forward to going deeper into this work. But I think you just addressed my comment, and I think what you were just describing was sort of the project versus programmatic approach, right? Okay, so I'm tracking,
Yes.
Good, and I really support that. And we just had a topic in CD this cycle where the data was interesting, but what was driving that data would have been very interesting as well. And it seems like we'll have more opportunity to do that in the programmatic approach. And I get it, we're not going through the discussion questions, but just on that project versus programmatic approach, I really support the programmatic approach.
Thank you for that comment.
Other comments, questions? Tony?
Just one more. Thank you so very much. I am so impressed with the manner in which you've been able to turn this work into measurements and indicators, our goal area, and are looking to track based on data so that we know where we are and kind of where we're heading and make adjustments. I understand it's a work in process. What I do want to know more about, and not now, but when you come back to us, is the impact of the data collection or the data availability, both from both sides, I should say, from the side of our partners or communities, as well as from the side of our partners at a federal level, and where you believe the exposures may be, because as we get into this plan, we really want to understand where the interruptions and hiccups might be that we may want to guide for and understand how we would solve for in the future. You spoke about how you cannot require, or somewhere I read that data collection is not required, and I'd like to know the extent to which we're really depending upon that data collection at a local level, or the extent to which we've provided for that in the data that we collect.
Yes.
And I understand the resource issue, where the federal government is concerned and the limitations that could be placed on local governments for their ability to help us out, but I'm not really sure where I understand that's going to impact us. So if you could come back with a little more on that when you do return and we're unpacking some of these indicators and measures, I greatly appreciate that. I hope other council members would as well. Thank you.
I do have a quick response if we have time, but
Yeah.
certainly will more fully address this question, which I appreciate. But like one example, which is work that our Community Development Research Department does in concert with the Housing and LCA team, is to collect information about the local programs, tools, and fiscal, opportunities that local governments put in place to advance the production of affordable housing. And so we have an annual survey, we put out that survey, we, have them, speak to that annually so that we're able to kind of summarize that and say, here's what's being done in our local communities. Now, I'm sure, I know I have colleagues who have been involved in that work for 20 years, and I'm sure we did not start with 100% response rate there. And we built up that over time. I think that, a similar approach for climate strategies might be, something of interest. I think it will take development and co-creation with our local governments to make sure that we're not putting a burdensome thing in front of them to do, but really creating ways for them to tell us more about their work, and we can reflect that and, kind of present it more as what's happening in the region. So those are the types of data development projects that we're thinking about to get at those regional measures. Again, they won't all happen overnight, and they will take time, and we want to make sure that we're doing that and being good partners in that. But those might be some of the ways that we can look to processes like that to create information where we may not be able to, kind of source it from in other ways. And some of that has nothing to do with federal cutbacks or anything like that. It just is, the information does not exist yet.
I understand.
Yeah.
All right,
And if I
Councilmember.
could, just one more time.
Sure.
If there's any ability to partner some of that incentive that we're providing, perhaps in local grants, I know this doesn't all work together, but in the local development assistance and the work that we're doing, if there's any way to think about how to tease that out in those processes, please do. Thank you.
Great, Councilmember Pacheco.
Mr. Chair, members, actually, I look forward to have this presentation to the Equity Advisory Committee. Often we have a presentation how we operate and what we do, but we don't get to the metrics at the end, and then they'll ask later. I think you can pull out an equity metric, and whether it's the housing or what other subject matter that you have there. So I look forward to having that happen.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that kind of came up as you're going through the data and looking at the spreadsheets and all of that is we have laid out we talked at the beginning of our meeting, the land, water, and people commitments. And I think that's one concern that I have had throughout the whole process is we need to make sure we're making progress on the commitments. Is there a way to tie some of what you're doing with some of that work? Like to show, so we can actually communicate that, again, it's not a statement we're reading at the beginning of a meeting, it's something we're building into our work.
Absolutely. Love that. Chair, Councilmember Barber, I just want to pull up this slide, and under the Met Council measures, we're referring to our equity frameworks, anti-displacement, environmental justice, community-centered engagement, but also the commitments that were made in to the American Indian Advisory Council. So I think that as we recharter that group and talk about how we're going to track our response to those commitments and the work of those commitments, that is where we'll sort of see the mechanism for, developing the reporting on how we're doing on implementation there. Yeah.
Yeah, great comment on accountability. Thank you so much again for this work. We know that you're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of it. To be continued.
To be continued. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I know this is a committee of the whole. We normally don't have an announcement, but I think you have one.
I'll do a quick one, Mr. Chair. I sent an email on the topic, but we've welcomed Lydia Gurma to the council. She's in the audience today. Lydia joined as chief of staff over at the regional administrator, and so she'll be working on a number of projects I outlined in the presentation. You'll get to see more of her and have opportunities to work with her, but as we work to be one Met Council, Lydia coming on board is a huge part of that process. Thank you.
Welcome, Lydia. And thank you all. We'll see you soon. I haven't left yet. 6 more days, who's counting? No, 7 more days. Anyway, this meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.